Welcome to another topic in the Marxian economics course. Well, this topic is one of the topics which was not originally within the lecture series, and I am actually taking this video after the initial series was completed. So I might not have mentioned that I will talk on financial system next week. I mean, the week of the previous week. Well, basically, what we are going to do is, some people might be actually surprised because some people assume that Marxian economics, as a school, is not interested in financial system or money, which is wrong. I mean, for Marx, money was actually one of the primary subjects he was interested in, and he wrote a lot on separately, besides money, on the role of the financial system in the capitalist system also, both in Capital Volume 2 and Capital Volume 3. We will talk mostly on financial system, but there will be a part where we will see extension of the MCM money commodity money model of Marx, that to which financial the way financial system is defined, or let's say is the function of financial system is defined in Marxian economics is related to that model. That's why I will introduce that model. But in that model, actually, we will see also how Marx defines the function of what he calls commercial capital or commercial capitalists, who are basically the capitalists whose function is sale of the products or commodities. And then you have industrial capitalists whose function is production of the commodities. And then we will, on financial system, we will see, of course, this is just an introduction. And in this introduction, we will see how, according to Marx, we can define the function of financial system, where it fits, how it benefits the capitalist economy. And then briefly, we will see how financial system acts within a typical economic crisis cycle, which is an interesting analysis by itself. Basically, it also answers the question, with some additions to the capitalist system, a more complex capitalist system, is it able to overcome the problems that were mentioned in the analysis of the more simplistic form of capitalist system. So we will see that also at the very end of this lecture. So let's start. This is very basic. This is not. This definition is not only related to Marxian economics. According to economics in general, almost all schools, financial institutions are some of all institutions which provide money for consumption to capitalists and non-capitalists, provide money capital to capitalists. So in the first case, actually, capitalists are acting not as capitalists, but just consumers. They take the money and they buy a house for themselves, for example, in that case. They act as consumers. And then provide money capital to the capitalists. In this case, money capital is used for investments. And provide a place where the idle money capital can be stored and some money can be earned through it. Well, if you put your money into the bank, that money might be used, lended to someone who wants to buy a house. In that case, that money is not used as capital is not used as capital by the borrower, since he is not using it to control the production process, but just to do consumption. That it might be argued that the money is used as capital by the banking system or the related financial institution. Basically, since the financial institution decide where the money will be used, and basically it can decide the money will be used by a company, this company or that company, or not by a company but a consumer. As a result, it directs available monetary funds from one sector to other or away from the sectors, and in that way, it is controlling the overall production process in the economic system. It is controlling what is being produced and even how it is being produced to some extent. Um, well, maybe not that much how it is being produced, but since I mean in the end the companies will decide. Although it might very much possible that when the banks don't direct funds to one sector, that sector might not be able to do technological improvements, and basically that might very well define how things are being produced by that sector. And of course, lack of funds might also decrease the production scale of the companies. So in Marxian economics, sometimes I mean some Marxian economists, very famous ones, think the financial capitalists are the ones that are actually at the top of the system, deciding how overall funds in the economic system will be directed. So that gives them, according to those Marxian economics, disproportionate power compared with the other capitalists. But anyway, let's continue. Now, this is our initial MCM model. With the companies are buying something with money. Initially they have money. They buy some inputs with money. They transform those inputs and then they sell it and they got more money. M dot, let's say. The extended version of this formula is this. They buy something with money. They buy commodities with money. These are production inputs at the same time. They do production with those inputs. They have outputs as new commodities within their hands, and they sell these commodities and they got more money. This is typical. In a typical factory, you can see it. In a typical, supermarket, however, you see the relation as MCM almost. It is as if the company is buying commodities and then selling those commodities without changing them. I mean, the cereal or for example, tomato the supermarket buys from the farmer is basically same as the tomato that is sold to the customer. Very, very similar and limited changes might be made in some cases. Sometimes it's just packaged. There are some services being produced, but according to Marx, the idea that it is collecting it is specialized in selling of those commodities itself is a special service that gives the supermarkets or commercial capital kind of justification for existence, and we will see that in a moment. In financial institutions, however, the formula is even shorter, M. So they have money, they give certain people money, and they got money back as more money. So where does this extra money come from? Both here for financial institutions, but also for the commercial institutions. That's our big question. Of course, our focus is financial institutions, but we will also see commercial capital. So since our focus is financial institutions, however, let's start looking what is their function. And by looking what their function is, initially we will look what their function is for non-capitalists, we will also get some idea. I mean, that's actually there you can also you can also see a simpler version of the same reasoning we will see when we will ask the question, what is functional financial institutions for the capitalist, basically. So for non-capitalists, so when you do consumption, well, typically consumers are, well, at some point we might say they sell. I mean, a typical, if they are not capitalists, especially that's the case, or if we have a more traditional economy, this might be the case. So they have some certain commodities to sell. For in capitalist economy, mostly this is labor power. They got money in return, and they buy something else, C2, basically, which is the commodity they want to consume. But even for the commodities, I mean, at the end they have the output, which is basic commodity, and they sell this commodity. And as consumer, not as capitalist, but as a consumer, they might buy some commodity for their private use. Of course, they might also use part of this money back for investment. In that case, I mean, this money will continue to serve as capital. But if this money is being used for private purposes, in that case, this money is not anymore capital, but is used for private pleasure of the capitalists. So, if we have no financial institution, in that case, without first selling C1, the person, our agent, cannot buy C2. Because first, he or she should have the money, which can only be get when you sell C1, and then you need to get C2. You have to get C2. You might ask, why may we want to buy C2 before we get sell C1? Well, first, there are two justifications, although nowadays in our economic system, there is no justification for doing that, basically. But the two basic justifications were in past. C2 could be emergency need, so you might need it immediately. For example, that can be a heart operation in a hospital. So even before, I mean, and there might be some time if you are a worker to sell sufficient number of labor power to pay the cost of that heart operation, and you cannot wait, and you cannot sell your labor time in excess. That's not physically possible. You cannot sell tomorrow's labor today. But maybe it is possible, but it's not common, at least, for someone to pay for your whole year's labor work at once money. So in that case, you can borrow money from the financial system, and then pay for C2, and then sell C1, and then pay the money you have to the institution from where you have borrowed money. That institution might actually also be the hospital. The hospital might allow you to do the operation in credit, and then you might pay the money into the hospital in time. Usually, the money you pay is more than the money you would pay if you had directly pay the cost of C2. I mean, without borrowing money first and paying piecemeally. If you pay immediately, if you have already enough money, probably usually the money you pay is smaller, but with some difference in the amount, you may be able to pay the money later, as I said, piecemeally, month by month, maybe, which you can get by selling your C1, whatever it is. We will talk more on this in the coming parts.